correspondent, taking a look at Genius Sports for us. GENI. This thing has been a genie, George, and it's delivered all kinds of wishes granted, up 43% this year. Not a lot of news flow. So what's going on, you think?
Well, this is, if you look at it, obviously NFL has been very accretive to some of these sports betting companies, OJ, since just going back a few months ago, companies like Genius Sports and Flutter, which is basically the parent company, or FanDuel, which is the recognized brand for online sports betting here in the United States, and DraftKings, of course, and MGM Bets. These are all stocks that have been performing quite well, respectively, over the past few months. But Genius is essentially a technology gaming company that essentially integrates technologies to link sports leagues as well as betting companies together. And they have a proprietary technology or data tracking technology, which makes it quite compelling, I suggest, in this environment that we're in as of late, especially from a seasonal standpoint, where a lot of the sports leagues are ramping up, particularly the NFL, which is a very big sports betting league in our country. But, the stock is not moving in and of all on its own. It's actually moving in sympathy with a lot in the group. Now, today, there wasn't any particular news on Genie, but there was some news of its major competitor, which is FanDuel. And one of the things that they came out and said is going into 2027, they actually see changes in the revenue estimates by 1.5 times the previous expectations. The other thing is they also initiated a $5 billion share buyback. And so these two things together actually pushed that stock up quite a bit today. And I think in sympathy, we're actually seeing Genie move to the upside as well. Now, if you actually look at the macro elements to the sports betting environment in the United States, one of the interesting things I found out is from a mobile betting standpoint, only 38 states have approval from a legal standpoint, and 2 of the states that are not approved are Texas and California. So I think what's happening here is there's a little bit more visibility in those 2 states for mobile betting applications and maybe some legislative approval in that regard. And this is, I think, why FanDuel is moving to the upside, but also Genie is moving in sympathy with that name as well.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. It's, I guess, is it a more secure, less secure way to play the sports betting versus the actual brokers? What do you think?
Well, okay, if you want to compare this company to, let's say, FanDuel or DraftKings, Genius is basically a less secure one. And the reason being is they're quite a ways away from adjusted profitability. If you'll notice in the last 6 months or so, it's actually doubled the pace or the rate of change of FanDuel and some of the other more profitable names out there. And so this is a high beta name, and it's also a low capitalization company, around $1.7 billion in market cap and about $600 million in sales. So it's a high beta way to play, maybe seasonality, but also, I think the expectations for more legislative approvals. And you have to think about, maybe if the Democrats win in November, does that provide a catalyst for additional approvals? So you have to think in that regard. And that might be another reason this whole group is moving higher. But I think the other thing about Genius is if you actually consider the losses last year relative to the forward estimates, they lost 21 cents last year. The estimates for 2025 are a loss of 2 cents. So they're getting closer to break even, and I suggest that's also perhaps one of the reasons why it's been outperforming. But it does have a little bit higher short interest, around 7%, compared to FanDuel. Okay.
Like the notion on the kind of earlier stage of this company, that's kind of the risk you take. Also the reward, though. They're basically, it's a supplier, so that's kind of how it works. Suppliers should be generally kind of higher beta, higher risk. I do wonder, as we get full legalization, if that kind of changes some of the dynamics for a growth company, right? Then they should be able to start really gearing up the profitability once that effort is complete.
Well, they get closer to it, but once we inch closer to full, 50-state legalization, then it comes down to scalability. And one of the things about the other 2 major competitors, DraftKings and FanDuel, they combined have about 73% market share, and MGM has about 8%. So, Genie is actually one of those smaller companies in the 19% out of the bigger 3 players out there. And there's always talk about maybe their proprietary technology is better in some regards, and there's also speculation. I'm not speculating it's going to happen of takeovers, and that's something else that could be employed here from a standpoint of the stock moving higher. And lastly, I don't speculate on takeovers, but once you get closer to break even, that whole narrative becomes a little bit more compelling. So I'll just end it there.
All right, nice. Thanks, George. Good analysis. Good find.
Okay.
GENI